Welcome back. Here we are on the journey, episode 9. Man, I love doing this. That's maybe a good place to start. A lot of thoughts in my mind right now. One of them is talking about my first book that I'm writing, that I'm putting together. It'll be an ebook. The goal of this, I guess I could say, is my goal is to create for me an entry-level book that I can write, that I believe in, that makes sense to me, and I think the name of the book will be Ways We Protect Ourselves. So I was thinking about going through that and seeing if I can kind of give a 10-15 minute overview of that. So we'll begin here, I think. And so ways we protect ourselves. Essentially, I'm writing this ebook because one of my favorite things that I've learned in psychology, in therapy, in this work of healing and encountering others, is that most of the ways we protect ourselves, most of the things we do, we're just not even conscious that it's a mechanism. It's not a great way to say it, but most of the ways we protect ourselves are unconscious. We don't realize that they're happening. They're these automatic defense mechanisms that happen underneath the level of conscious control. So often, one of the things that I work with and my clients and what they experience is kind of these feelings that of frustration of being stuck. Like, say to me, why do I do this again? Especially after periods where we've done a lot of work together, maybe like 6 months in, and something will happen and they'll feel like they kind of regress and they'll be like, why am I doing this? Why do I fall into the same old pattern? And my response to them is usually like really simple and very similar and very boring. I just say like, well, of course you did this again. A lot of times they'll come into sessions and kind of be like, JP, like somebody said, I feel like you're going to want to hit me over the head. It was playful, you know what? I was like, why? And they were like, because I got myself into the same situation. And I just said like, no, of course you got yourself into the same situation. You've been practicing these habits for like 25 years, 30 years, 40 years, sometimes 60, 70 years you've been practicing this way of being in the world. Of course you're going to fall back into it. Which brings us to the kind of first fundamental point. I think chapter 1 is adaptability. We are adaptable. And most of our ways of being in the world, we've adapted to help take care of us in situations that were unsafe, that were not perfectly safe. We learned how to adapt in those situations to cause the minimal pain and distress in us. So my favorite way, and actually I think the most helpful and most accurate way that we should look at our defense mechanisms, whether they're patterns of thinking, whether there's ways of interacting, whether they're ways of dealing with emotion, the most helpful and accurate way to think of them is brilliant adaptations that we developed in order to minimize pain, make the world more safe, and help us to have a better chance of continuing forward in the future with level head. That's what our defenses are. They're brilliant adaptations. Now we start developing these adaptations before we're even aware. So Harry Stack Sullivan says, personality is the combination of all the interpersonal behaviors that we develop in order to reduce anxiety with our caregivers, bolster self-esteem, and make the world a safer place. This is happening at the age of infancy, right? And here's where attachment theory comes in. Attachment theory teaches us that every human being, every child has needs, physical needs and emotional needs. And the way that their caregivers are able to attentively recognize what those needs are and accurately and effectively meet them, that's the degree to which the child will develop what's called a secure attachment. What the attachment theorists say is that our way of relating to our parents, the predictability and the kind of average ways of interacting that our parents do with us over and over and over again, that forms the expectation for all relationships in the future. So essentially, the way that the effectiveness or ineffectiveness of our parents in meeting our needs in infancy, that's creating our relational template. what we believe we can expect from our relationships, what we should not expect. So if our parents are really indulgent emotionally, right? Maybe they're kind of permissive, and so they let us get away with things. They let us get away from things. They let us get away with things, but they're never really there when we need them. We're going to develop a relational template that says, in relationships, people let you do whatever you want, and they'll never say no, right? Or if our parents are very harsh and strict and perhaps abusive, we will develop patterns and expectations in relationship that relationships are abusive. All people are abusive. Pardon the sound. We got the trashman, good trashman, taking care of us today. And so this is what's called person relations, or in the theory, object relations, is that the way we interact with our parents creates our expectations for interactions for the rest of our life. Now, attachment theory says that these ways of interacting are pretty solid, but they can change. But they it takes a lot of effort and a lot of focus to do that. That's what therapy is. But one of my favorite ways to explain just how unconscious our defense mechanisms are, just how unconscious these ways of protecting ourselves are, is language. Because a lot of times one of the other things that people will say is, and this is a good kind of rule of thumb, humans take responsibility in situations where they have no responsibility because they have no control in order to make us feel safer. So this is a really common theme, is that our defenses are ways to make us feel safer. This is especially one of the clearest signs of this is in PTSD. One of the symptoms of PTSD is self-blame. Believing that you're the reason that it happened, believing that it's your fault, believing that there's something you did that you shouldn't do. Now, why does somebody who experienced some horrible form of abuse want to believe that they're to blame? Well, if you were to blame, it means that you had responsibility that you misused. And if you misused responsibility, if you had that, you had control. And so the reason we blame ourselves is because it gives us a sense that we had control of this situation and we just screwed it up. Why is that an advantage? Well, if we had control in that situation, we just screwed it up. There's a couple things we can do. First of all, it means that the world isn't quite so dangerous and perilous and unsteady as we think it to be, which means that the world is a lot safer. The second thing that it does is that if I'm the reason that I screwed up that, well, then I can be the reason that I stay safe in the future. So if it's my fault that I did something to cause this trauma, that means that I could do something to avoid it in the future. So it gives me a false sense of control and safety that I can actually avoid these situations. When the reality is, the world is a safe... The world is an unpredictable place. And bad things happen to good people. Bad things happen to good people. It's much safer to believe bad things happen to people who made mistakes. Oh, I made a mistake. That means if I don't make any mistakes in the future, bad things won't happen to me. So that's kind of an aside on an inelegant way to explain that concept that could be really helpful. Of why we take blame. We take blame for situations where there's no blame for us because it gives us a sense of control over the situation. And it makes the world feel more safe because we can believe that we could do it right. But to the point of the way that these defenses are like these brilliant adaptations, to the point of the embeddedness of how deep down they are. One of the examples that I use for individuals that I work with is I say, how much power did you have over learning English? They usually think about it like, well, I didn't try very hard in school. Or I said, no. Before school, right? How much power did you have over the language you learned? And they look at me and say, none. I say, how much, why is it that you can say I have no responsibility for this language that I've learned? And yet you believe that you have responsibility for these things that you were learning even before you were learning language. Right? It doesn't make sense for me, John Paul Dombrowski, to say, "What's wrong with me? I should have learned Spanish. Why did I learn English instead of Spanish? I couldn't control where I was born." Just like you and I can't control the defenses that we develop, because these defenses begin way earlier than we have any conscious control. This is hard because what it means is that in order to heal from these defenses, we have to wake up to how little power and control we have in our lives. So often in prayer, right? I can pray, "Hey God, please give me this thing," right? So I can kind of ask God to direct reality. Or I can pray, "Hey God, let me just let go of my want for this thing." So I can ask for God to help me just totally surrender. This morning, the prayer that I said is, "God, help me to surf the waves of reality that I'm on. Help me to work with the currents. Help me to be a savvy surfer, noticing where is the current, where is the wave, how can I balance effort and surrender so that I'm working with what's in front of me while not trying to control the things that I can't." Man, surfing would be miserable. For the record, I don't surf, but I can imagine that it would be miserable. I would love to. If I just went out in the waves and just wished for the right wave all day, instead of realizing that, like, oh, this is about becoming an expert in working with the waves. And that's really what our defenses are. In our childhood, our defenses, right, screaming when we need help, because if we are not loud, our needs don't get met. Or maybe minimizing our distress, because every time we build up and bring up a need, we get punished or criticized, or we get told that we want too much attention. These are brilliant adaptations that we learn to surf with the waves of our environment where we were growing and developing. The difficulty is that you're not in that environment anymore. And so long after that environment's over, we behave the same way. And even what's difficult is that when we interact with our environment in a certain way, the environment responds. So there's one defense called, it's actually a combination of defenses, called projective identification. So there's two defenses here. One is projection. And projection happens when there's a feeling that I have that I unconsciously, this is all unconscious, I don't want to feel this feeling. And so what I do is unconsciously I cut off from this feeling. Well, I can't totally cut off with the feeling. That feeling has to go somewhere else. So what do? I cut off with the feeling and I kind of throw it at somebody else, right? So maybe I'm feeling really angry, but there's some kind of unconscious rules like I'm not allowed to be angry. Well, what am I going to do? One way is I project that anger onto somebody else. I say, "Why are you so mad at me? Why are you so angry at me?" Right? So that's projection. Projection is when I cut off from my own emotional states and I cast them on somebody else. The other defense is identification. And identification is grabbing onto feelings and believing that they're ours. It's one way to put it, or kind of internalizing feelings. But identification is when, projective identification is when you put these two things together. Identification, which is this belief that our feelings are ours, and projection, which is casting beliefs onto other people, these feelings to other people. And so what projective identification is me saying, "You're really angry with me." And then I'm going to treat you like you're angry with me. And if I treat you like you're angry with me, even if you're not angry, you're saying, "I'm not angry." "Yeah, you are. You're so mean. You're so angry." Well, that's actually going to bring out defensiveness. And that person is actually going to begin very easily to identify with the anger. And then that person's going to be angry at me and say, "You know what? I am angry at you. F off." And then I'm this self-fulfilling prophecy. So I projected anger onto them. And then I induce that anger through projective identification. This happens all the time. All the time, all the time, all the time, all the time. For example, I can be kind of an emotionally needy person. So if I walk around and I say, you just think I'm too needy all the time. I don't want to bother you. You think I'm too needy all the time. You think I'm too needy all the time. You think I'm too needy all the time. The more I say that, the more I act that out, I'm acting out the very thing that I'm afraid they'll see in me. But I'm acting out of it, and so they see it in me. And so they see it in me, and then I say, hey, I told you so. I'm too needy, and you're pushing me away. When the fact is I'm identifying with that. And so one of the things about these defenses is if I had to learn to be really, really tough in my environment because the people around me were really tough and critical, well, then when I'm out of my environment, if I'm acting really tough and critical, I'm going to interact and bring out toughness and criticism from other people. So this is one of the great tragedies of our defense mechanisms. We develop our defense mechanisms in order to keep us safe early in childhood, to minimize the damage. But later on, when we're no longer in those situations, those defense mechanisms are already set in place. They operate on this unconscious level. So it takes a lot of time, reflection, and work to change. And this is why awareness is so important. We have to grow in awareness before we can change any of these things. And so one of the other kind of pillars in this ebook that I'm writing is don't put yourself in a box. Everything that I'm talking about, attachment theory, the kind of 4 different styles of attachment, right? Secure, preoccupied, dismissive, fearful, all these forms of attachment, the interpersonal coping styles that I'll describe, moving towards, moving away, moving against, the different personality characteristics of narcissistic personalities, avoidant personalities, histrionic personalities, obsessive personalities, masochistic personalities, all these different personality types, these words, please, 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 don't put yourself in a box. It's language, right? I love the Myers-Briggs. I hate the way it's used, right? Myers-Briggs is not, just scientifically speaking, the most accurate assessment in the world. Actually, it's pretty inaccurate because it gives you a different reading each time depending on how you are, where you are, whatever. So it doesn't have a lot of... But I love the Myers-Briggs because what it does is it gives us language. Now, the error I think that happens is people take the Myers-Briggs and they say, I'm this, but this doesn't match up, so maybe I'm not that. I'm this, but this doesn't match up, so I'm not that. Or I'm kind of like this. I have this one quality, but I'm not really... Let go of the boxes. Don't worry about identifying as one thing or another. None of these things are ever going to fully describe you. They're just not. But what I can tell you is that if you can approach these as language tools, if you can approach these different types of defenses and ways of relating to the world, if you can recognize that these are all resources to help you, give you language to describe yourself, this is where I think the Myers-Briggs is great, is it gives us language to describe ourselves that we didn't even know. Introversion, extroverted, sensing, feeling, intuiting. Which, sidebar, intuition is so undervalued in our society because we're so logical and rational, and if you're an intuitive person, you just need to know that you're an intuitive person, and you need to find people that are in your tribe. Intuition is a way of knowing, but we don't know where it comes from, right? So intuition is like feeling. Like, I know I'm feeling sad. How? I can't tell you, but I am. Intuition is a way of knowing, but not knowing how we know. It's a feeling. It's a felt sense. It's just, I'm intuiting this. And you need to learn how to trust that. Intuition is not irrational. It's transrational. So rational logical thought is because A, then B. If A, then B. Like it's this way of linear thinking that's super strong, that's developed the sciences that our society's built on. But we need to recognize the transrational way of being, transrational way of thinking, which is not illogical. It's just above logic. It's apart from logic. And there's strengths and weaknesses to each. But if you're an intuitive person, start honing those intuitive skills. Stop trying to logic your way into intuition. It's not going to work. Also, practice a little bit of the opposite, but that's a side tangent. Sidebar over. What these things can give us is language, right? So Myers-Briggs can give us language. These defenses give us language, but don't put yourself in a box. Please, please, please don't put yourself in a box. Use this language to develop your self-knowledge. Use this language to gain an awareness. Use this language to recognize, like, oh, that's not me. It's a way I protect myself. It's scaffolding built around me. And so I guess I'll just say this briefly, because I'm teaching our team about it today. These ways of protecting ourselves. In interpersonal theory, I've talked about this already. Part of this. In interpersonal theory, when we're hurt, we develop ways of protecting ourselves. We respond to that hurt. And there's two different distinctions of ways we protect ourselves in interpersonal theory. There's interpersonal ways of protecting ourselves, the actions and behaviors that we have with others. And there's intrapersonal defenses, the ways that we protect ourselves. So these are external defenses, the ways we interact with others, and internal defenses, ways we interact with ourselves. And there's 3 external types of defenses or types of character. These are very, 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 very broad. Moving towards, which is people-pleasing. So I protect myself by getting on everybody's good side. I protect myself by being close to people. I protect myself by agreeing with others so I can minimize conflict or dispute. Moving away, which is I protect myself by, if there's a hazard, I just get out of town. If there's a difficult relationship, I just head away from it. If there's a difficult conversation, I'm just going to kind of avoid having it. Whereas the people pleaser, right? If there's a difficult conversation, I'll just agree with you. And then there's moving